Okay, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Whiskey with Stu. Thought I'd have a little fun today. We've talked a lot about various subjects at this stage. We haven't gone too deep. I've tried to keep it pretty straightforward. A lot of you folks are newbies, or you're just want to try it a little bit. So I've kind of gone on the easy scotches, easy concepts. Certainly, the fermentation was very simple and straightforward. Um, I wanted to jump around a little bit and talk about peat. I won't say holy cow, but Sneaky Pete. If you've seen that show, the first season was really good. What's his name? Bryan Cranston's kind of a secondary role, but he plays a big part. Fantastic. But that we're not reviewing cable right now, or Netflix, or whatever it was. We're talking about peat. So what is peat? Everybody says, oh, it's peaty, right? Or people say it's an ashtray or what have you. So what I'm doing here is I am filming my screen, recording my screen. And I have a program photo booth, which I'm not even using. And everything's backwards. I can see this is written backwards, so I may actually flip it through the magic of Final Cut Pro at the end. Anyway, back to what we're talking about, peat. So by doing my screen, I thought I could make this a little bit of a show and show you what peat is. So if this is working right, I should be shrinking on your screen, and the rest of my desktop should be showing up. Okay, so this is peat. All right, peat is organic. Peat is dried and dead floral, leaves, plants, seaweed, all that stuff. And I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions of years, this stuff has accumulated. It will differ. The makeup of this, sorry, I'm over here, you can't see my hands. Let me see if I can click over here a little bit. There we are, get my hands. The makeup of the peat is going to differ by regions. I don't know a lot about that difference. I was reading up a little bit before making this post or video. And they say that other areas are much heavier when you talk about that smoky flavor. So we've got a friend of the show, Bourbon Bill, says this stuff is like a wet sock to him, which I'm never quite sure how smoke and wet socks go together, but we'll go with that for a second. I'm guessing that he's referring to more highland area scotches that try to bring out a smoky flavor. So they dig this stuff out, they harvest it. You can see they cut it into these sort of, well, I don't know if you can see this guy over here on my screen. Oh, I can use my mouse, can I? And see this chunk, and they harvest it and they chop it out here, and they just let it dry. And it will rain, of course, in Scotland, but they just let the element, they expose it to the elements for months, and it dries. And you get into June, July, they start stacking it up, they put it off to the side, and they bring it into the malting area, if you will. So I just want to jump real quickly to some of these regions that we're talking about. So here, let's see. I had a couple spots. There we are. This is Scotland. You take the highlands and I'll take the lowlands. Actually, I don't really think too much whiskey is even made here in the lowlands. We've talked about Speyside in the past. So if you hear Highland Scotch or Speyside Scotch, Speyside is actually part of the Highlands. And look how big it is. So everybody who's seen all these Scottish movies and There Must Be One and all that stuff, the Highlands is most of Scotland, okay? And I think there's a big river here. Edinburgh's right around here. So Highlands is a massive area. It's not like just a mountain. Okay, we're going to the Highlands. It's a huge area. And all these areas do have peat, okay? And it's very much smokier and heavier, ashtrayish over here. And then you got all these different islands. And we're talking about the kind of, as Speyside is known for the sherry bombs, which we've talked about in the past, Islay down here is known for the peats. And let's see, I even have a special, here we go. Here's Isla, right here, okay? And if you've ever, for those of you that know your bottles a little bit more than others, there's bottles known as Jura, and it's always kind of named after an area. I have here a bottle of the Bowmore. Again, it might be backwards, but I'm going to try to flip it if it is. The Bowmore 18, and it comes from the Bowmore area, Bowmore region and distillery. And I brought this one out, by the way, because it's one of my favorites. This is about $135 a bottle. I have some notes somewhere. It's actually under there. And it's 18 years, obviously by the 18, and it's 43% by alcohol volume. So I'm going to take a pause just for a moment because it's whiskey with stew. Oh, it smells so good. All right, so even as I interrupt the lesson, I want to tell you a little bit about this. It's got a kind of a pear flavoring. It's got some orange in there. And it's a real big distinction between people who think it might be, who hate anything peat, right? Because it's too smoky. And indeed, there are distillers out there, and some of the distillers actually want to go for a heavy smoke flavor, and they compete on the smoke flavor. Again, I had the Wee Beastie, right? That was a 5-year, and that was a beast. It wasn't a wee beast, it was a beast. And it was a heavy smoked, less mature whiskey. This is matured in over 18 years. I won't get into the barrels at the moment as to which type. So again, a lot of refinement, okay? So not all scotches are the same, and certainly within the categories, they're very different. So this is very different as well. All right, so I want to go back to some pictures here. Where was everything you need to know about peat? Oh, maybe what I'll do is, this is from the Whiskey Advocate. Maybe I will copy this link into the comment section somewhere if you want to read it on your own. Here's one of our trusty, well, this guy's actual name is Pete, so there you are. Let's see what we got here. All right, here we go. This is what I really wanted to show you. And we have not really talked about the malting process yet, and we're going to kind of skip over that a little bit. But, so you get this barley, you malt it up, and then you lay it out over this long area. It's between 1 foot to 18 inches thick, okay? Now you want to stop the malting. You don't want this thing to totally grow into a plant, right? So how do you do it? You smoke it out. Now you can use coal, you can use natural gas, okay? These things are not, well, maybe the coal does, but maybe it doesn't. I got to check on that. Anyway, the natural gas for sure. Normally when you have a non-peated scotch, they're using a fuel that is not, okay, going to leave any kind of flavoring or taste behind. The peat does, right? You saw what it was. It's got organics in it. It's got history in it. Maybe not a dinosaur. Seaweed, floral, the whole thing like I've talked about. So it really leaves a nice, interesting flavor behind. Now, what's interesting is people think that they use a ton of it and they just keep piling it on. Most of a peated scotch, when it's distilled, when it's dried out like this, they'll just peat a little bit. So they'll maybe do 15 or 20% of the drying of it using this peat as fuel, and then they'll switch to the other fuel, which is tasteless. So another interesting component, right? I'm going to skip a little bit forward. We're going to get back to distilling at another time, because that's fascinating by itself. But there is a question in distilling as to how much does the underlying barley impact. Remember we talked about fermentation, and does the fermenting process, the different fungi that they use, does have an impact on taste? And of course, our friend Jeff says it does have an impact, and there's lots of reasons for that. And in Scotch, they don't experiment a great deal in the different yeasts, right? They do in the United States, and they do in Japan for their whiskeys, whether it be EY or just Y. But here, going back to distilling, when you have a raw whiskey and you distill it, or a moonshine that's clear, and you put it into the same barrels, after 5, 7, 3, 18 years, even if it's the same barrels, they're going to taste very differently. In fact, that's the whole reason why we have a smoke flavor to it, because it is passing through the distilled process, and distilling is not a pure process. It's not just bringing out the alcohol. Some of these other flavors are being passed through besides just in the barley. Okay, so it's an interesting point for me. All right, well, since that part is over, we're going to move on to the next whiskey. And again, I've talked about this one a great deal, Lagavulin. It also is in Islay. Let's see here. Lagavulin 16. And again, this is a go-to. I always have to have at least a bottle of this somewhere around here. So, and they're always at Costco. It's probably a $75 bottle at Costco. It's $63, you know. So go get one of these. We're talking about sophisticated whiskeys here. We're not talking about stuff that's just going to destroy you. We're talking about balance. We're talking about citrus. We're talking about some years behind it that's maturing and mellowing, usually. All right, so let's see what else I want to talk about on this page, if anything. That's really about it. I don't want to go too deep into this, but I did want to jump into this. There's places as to kind of the best peated whiskeys, 18 best peated whiskeys. The Wee Beastie is not in here, but the Ardbeg was a Wee Beastie. It was one of the top 10, I think, of the year by Whiskey Advocate. So it's the same group, and you can see this group here is all about peats. Talisker, and then here's the Bowmore. Again, one of the favorites. Look, they got 26-year stuff, right? And Port Charlotte, here's another great bottle. It's heavily peated, okay? But the balance to it is amazing. So if people are getting if you've tried some smoky whiskeys as opposed to peated whiskeys, it might be from the different part of the Highlands, right? It might be up in this area. This is a much more subtle, sophisticated group here, kind of like the Speyside. Speysides sometimes these guys will create a peated whiskey, and sometimes these guys will create non-peated whiskeys, and it's kind of fun to compare the two. There's a lot of experimentation. So that's really I got. All I have. Oh, wait, let me see what I had in my notes. I may have a little bit more. There might be some. Oh, yeah, there's one more item I want to talk about. The best for last. Hopefully you're still here. I might have to do this another time because I probably lost you. But what makes it smoky? Well, there's a part of the smoke, or that's released, which is called phenols. And phenols are measured as part per million, or phenols per million, never can get that right, ppms. And you have a measuring score between 0 to 309. And how they get to 309, I don't know. It might just be because the peatiest scotch they've created is 309. And I've had that bottle. It's an Ockmore bottle. My aunts bought me that bottle. It's a fantastic, and that was an intimidating bottle. I was actually, I had that bottle. I kept it off to the side originally. In fact, my very first bottle, well, it's a whole other story, but during the fire, somebody, it was in one spot sitting out, and when I came in later that night, it was not there. So it was sad. It was very sad. But that is a 309. And I stayed away from that thing for a long time. I finally went at it. And it was so citrusy and so amazingly balanced. It was, I mean, there was a smoke to it, but you wouldn't, I could give you one of these. So this has like a 35 or under 40 ppm, okay? This tastes smokier than the other one. At least, maybe it's not smokier. It's not as balanced as the other one, okay? So ppm, it's not all about ppm, right? because they can start a big ppm on the drying side, but what they can do on the back side and how much they they may hit it hard at 20% and then let the other 80% go for drying. So anyway, I feel like I'm rambling. I only had that one sip, so I don't think I'm affected yet at this stage. That's it. Let me know in the comment sections what your peaty scotches are that you like or that you'd like to try. Again, I would recommend the Lagavulin 16. We talked about the Game of Thrones Lagavulin 9, which was like $27. It normally went for about $60. And that's my dog. You can hear him. You can see him. Tony, how'd it go? All right, there you are. Hey! The only problem with the black dog is you can't even see the features of his face, right? All right, so Bowmore 18 can never go wrong. Highly endorse it. Be safe. Bye-bye. Oh, now I'm hitting this because that makes no sense. Nice picture. If I stop this, I go up to here.